You guys, I hope you're fantastic and amazing. Uh, Today we will be focusing on negative feedback and homeostasis, right? Continuing from where we left off. I hope the last class was effective and helpful to you, right? And also, I try to give some of my students notes so that they can refer to them when listening to the YouTube video. Okay, let's just get right straight into it. So let's start with negative feedback. So today we'll be doing negative feedback, right? What is negative feedback? Negative feedback is just an interaction between two hormones in which one stimulates an increase in another hormone, which then inhibits the first hormone, thus restoring balance, right? So you have two hormones. With regards to negative feedback, you have two hormones that are acting antagonistically, right? So they are opposing each other. The other one increases and the other one inhibits, right? So you have two hormones working together with each other antagonistically. So I'll explain the processes, right, that are under negative feedback. I hope that makes sense. But the essential idea, the underlying idea is that there are two hormones that are interacting with each other in order to maintain the internal environment, right? Okay, let's continue. So now let's look at the general sequence. What's the general sequence of negative feedback? So this is the general sequence of events. So the first thing that we're supposed to have is an imbalance. An imbalance needs to be detected, right? Whether it's an imbalance in water, an imbalance in sugar levels, an imbalance in carbon dioxide levels, but an imbalance must be detected, right? And number two, let's go to number two. Number two, the control center is stimulated by the imbalance, right? So that control center could be adrenal glands, pituitary gland, right? So the control center needs to be stimulated. Okay. Number three, what's the third point? The third point is that the control center needs to respond thereafter. So it needs to respond thereafter, right? Okay. Then let's go to number four. Number four, the message then needs to be sent to the target organ. So the message needs to be sent to the target organ. If you remember, in the last video, we said that the endocrine system communicates through hormones. It communicates through hormones. So the hormones are messengers, right? So whenever I speak about the message, I'm speaking about hormones, right? So these messengers are sent, okay? And number five, the organ responds. So the target organ needs to respond in order to bring about the imbalance back to normal, okay? Then number six, so the target organ obviously will oppose the balance, right? If there are low levels of water, right, in your body, the target organ will increase those levels back to normal, right? So it will oppose the imbalance, okay? Then number seven, the last one, then balance will be restored. And so these are a sequence of events that take place with regards to negative feedback mechanism, right? Okay, let's move on. So this is a sequence, just a diagram explaining the sequence of events, right? Sequence of events. So what happens? So we're starting here, there's an imbalance. Let's look at here. So whenever there's an imbalance, right, that is detected by the receptors, right? It could be receptor cells, any receptor cells, right? So it's detected by the receptors. Then the receptor sends impulses to the control center, right? This is the control center. And the control center, remember, it responds by sending a message to the target organ, or you can say effector. So it responds by sending a message to the target organ or effector. Then the effector imposes or opposes rather, not imposes, opposes the balance, right? Then your levels, the levels in the body or the imbalance in your body comes back to normal, right? The other way around is also true, right? Whenever there's an imbalance, remember, I'll repeat that again. Whenever there's an imbalance, the receptor, right? The receptor cells are notified, right? And they receive that imbalance and they send the message to the control center. Then the control center will then send a message in the form of a hormone directly into the bloodstream. And that hormone will go directly straight to the effector, right? Or the target organ. Then the effector will oppose the imbalance in order to maintain balance, right? Or homeostasis. We'll explain what is homeostasis and everything. Okay, let's continue. Okay, what is homeostasis? Let's just tackle the question of homeostasis. So the reason why we have negative feedback is so that we can maintain homeostasis. What is homeostasis? Homeostasis is the maintenance of a constant, please pay attention to constant. The maintenance of a constant internal environment regardless of the change in stimulus in the external environment, right? We can simplify this by saying that it's the maintenance of the same internal environment regardless of what's happening outside or in the external environment, right? So that's the simplest way to explain this definition. Okay, now let's go to negative feedback of water. How does our body uh, maintain water balance, right? Let's let's look at the first point, right? There's an imbalance. Let's look at the point where there's an imbalance where water levels have decreased in your body. Right? What happens when water levels go down in your body? Okay? Remember, the low levels in your body they have to be detected by receptors. We call those receptors osmoreceptors, and they are found in the hypothalamus. So they receive the message, they receive the imbalance, right? They are notified about the imbalance, and then they send impulses to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland becomes the control center, right? And remember, after this, the control center has to respond. It has to send a message in a form of a hormone. Let's see which hormone will it send, right? Then the pituitary gland will secrete more ADH. So that's the message. The pituitary gland will secrete ADH, more ADH. So what is ADH? ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone, right? It's responsible for water regulation. And that message needs to go to the target organ. Now let's see what is the target organ. And ADH is transported through the bloodstream to the kidneys. So the kidneys become your target organ. Does that make sense? Okay, now let's go to the fifth point. To the fifth point, what happens in the kidneys? Remember, the kidneys, they have to oppose the imbalance. They have to oppose the imbalance, right? Okay, number five. So the permeability. So permeability comes from the word permit. So it means that the collecting duct and the distal convoluted tubule, right, will increase their permeability. So it means that they will reabsorb more water into the blood, right? So it means they are permitting more water to enter the bloodstream. Does that make sense? Then when more water enters the bloodstream, number seven, what happens? Concentrated urine is excreted because more water has infiltrated the bloodstream, right? So what's left? The only thing that's left is waste to be secreted. Hence, the urine will be more concentrated, right? So it means that it will contain more waste products like glucose, right? So it will contain more waste products like sodium, right, or salt. So it will contain more waste products. Remember, your liver is responsible for cleaning your body, right? So it's responsible for cleaning your body. I hope this makes a lot of sense. Now let's go to the opposite, the inverse of water decreasing in your body, right? So what happens when there's an increase in water levels in your body? Maybe you've been drinking a lot of water, right? And that caused an increase in water levels in your body. So what happens? So the first thing is that the water levels that detected by receptors in the hypothalamus, right? Then they send impulses to the pituitary gland. Then the pituitary gland will secrete less ATH, sending the message. So ATH, then less ATH will go to the kidneys through the bloodstream. Remember, the kidneys are a target organ, right? Through the bloodstream. Then what happens in the kidneys? The permeability of the collecting duct and distal convoluted tubules decrease, right? So decrease. So when the permeability decreases, less water is reabsorbed or infiltrates into the blood. So less water infiltrates into the blood. Okay, number seven. Then if less water infiltrates into the blood, it means that your urine will contain a lot of water, right? So your urine will be diluted instead of being concentrated. So it will be diluted. Okay, let's continue. So this is how the body maintains water levels. Okay. Okay, so this is just a diagram of how water levels, right, are maintained in the body. I'll just explain this diagram so that it makes sense, right? So water content of the blood is normal, right? So what happens when the water content in your body becomes low, right? Maybe you too much salt or sweating, right? So we'll establish also a relationship between salt and water, right? Salt and water. What's the relationship between the two, right? So when you eat a lot of salt or you just ingest a lot of salt into your body, that decreases your water levels. I'm sure you've seen this whenever you're eating something that is very salty, right? After you become very thirsty because a lot of salt, right, diminishes the amount of water that's in your body. Or you've been sweating, you've been training, exercising, so you've been sweating, right? So the water content in your body decreases below normal. So what happens? So that is detected by the receptor or osmoreceptors, right, in the hypothalamus. Then the osmoreceptors will notify the brain or the pituitary gland. Then your pituitary gland will do what? The pituitary gland will send more ADH, right, to the kidneys, increasing the reabsorption of water, right? Increasing the reabsorption of water. Then after increasing the reabsorption of water, your water level content goes back to normal. Okay. Now let's look at the other side. So what happens when you've been drinking too much water? If you've been drinking too much water, the water content in your body becomes high, right? And when it becomes high, that's detected by your osmoreceptors in the hypothalamus. Then they send the impulses to the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland then secretes less ATH. Then less ATH is transported through the blood to the kidneys. Then what happens in your kidneys? The reabsorption of water decreases, right? The reabsorption of water decreases, which means that your body will excrete more water, right? In order to decrease, in order to increase or decrease rather the water content in your body back to normal. Okay. Okay, let's go to carbon dioxide regulation now. How carbon dioxide is uh, regulated in our bodies, right? So this is normal, right? We're starting here. Normal carbon dioxide and blood pH. So what's the relationship between carbon dioxide and blood pH? So when there's an increase in carbon dioxide levels in your body, what happens? That carbon dioxide leads to carbonic acid, right? It creates a lot of carbonic acid. And when your body has a lot of carbonic acid, it drops the pH in the blood, right? Remember the pH scale, right? So whenever your pH drops, it means that your body becomes more acidic, right? Whenever your pH increases, it means that your body becomes more alkalinic, right? So it becomes more alkaline, right? So remember that pH scale. So that drops the pH in the blood, right? So the drop in the pH of the blood is detected by chemoreceptors, right? Where do you find the chemoreceptors? You find them in the carotid artery, right? So this artery that's in your neck is connected to your brain and to your mouth, right? So it's in the neck. Okay, so it's in the carotid artery. So low pH is detected by chemoreceptors. Then chemoreceptors will send impulses to the medulla oblongata. Remember, we said in the nervous system that the medulla oblongata controls involuntary actions or involuntary movements like breathing, heartbeat, and etc. Right? So your medulla oblongata will do what? It will send impulses to the lungs and to your heart. So what will it do to the lungs? It will notify the lungs to increase the breathing rate, right? The depth and the rate of breathing. So the depth and the rate of breathing will increase. And also what will happen to your heart? Your heart rate will also increase, right? So increased heart rate and increased heartbeat will bring the carbon dioxide, a lot of carbon dioxide to your lung. And that carbon dioxide will then be exhaled to the outside, right? After it is exhaled to the outside, then your carbon dioxide levels they drop back to normal. Okay, so now let's get into the process itself. Okay, so number one, what happens? Number one, high concentration of carbon dioxide leads to the formation of carbonic acid, right? So the formation of carbonic acid in the body causes the pH in the blood to drop, right? And when the pH in the blood drops, chemoreceptors detect this drop in the blood. Where do you find the chemoreceptors? You find them in the carotid artery, right? So in the carotid artery. So carotid artery or the chemoreceptors, they're receptors, so they detect the imbalance, right? After detecting the imbalance, they send the impulses to the medulla oblongata, right? Then the medulla oblongata will send impulses to both the breathing and heart muscles, right? What are your breathing muscles? So your breathing muscles are your diaphragm and intercostal muscles. So what will happen to the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles, right? So the diaphragm and the intercostal muscles will contract, right? They'll contract, increasing the rate of breathing, right? Then what will happen to your heart? So the heart rate will also increase. In that fashion, more carbon dioxide moves to the lungs to be exhaled. Consequently, the carbon dioxide levels they decrease back to normal. So that's how the body deals with high levels of carbon dioxide in the body. Okay. Now, how does the body regulate glucose level or sugar levels? Now let's get to sugar levels. How does the body regulate sugar levels? Right. Okay, so the gland, right? The gland or organ that's responsible for regulating sugar level is the pancreas, right? It's the pancreas. So that's responsible for regulating sugar levels. So inside the pancreas, you find the cells that we call the isolates of Langerhans. Right? Those isolates of Langerhans, they contain two types of cells. They contain alpha cells, right, that are responsible for releasing a hormone called glucagon. And also you have beta cells, right, that are responsible for releasing the hormone insulin, right? Okay, so now let's get into the process. So when there's low blood glucose in your body, right, that that imbalance is detected by the cells, by the isolates of Langerhans in the pancreas, right? Then the isolates of Langerhans will do what? They will secrete, right? They will secrete a hormone called glucagon, right? They will secrete a hormone called glucagon. So when they secrete a hormone called glucagon, what will happen? The glucagon will be transported through the blood to your kidney, to your liver rather, not kidney, to your liver. to your liver, not kidney. So to the liver, right? Then your liver will do what? The liver will convert glycogen to glucose. So your liver will convert glycogen to glucose, right? Then your sugar levels increase back to normal. Sugar levels will increase back to normal. Okay, now let's check. Let's look at the case whereby your sugar levels are high. So what happens when your sugar levels when the sugar levels in the body they're high? The islets of Langerhans in the pancreas are stimulated, right? They detect the imbalance. Thereafter, they release a hormone called insulin, right? Insulin. Then the insulin will go to your, will be transported to your liver, right? Will be transported to your liver. Then the liver will convert glucose to glycogen, right? Allowing your allowing your sugar levels to decrease back to normal, right? Decrease back to normal. Okay. So I was just explaining the diagram. Now let's look at the process of how glucose levels are maintained in the body. So an increased glucose level in the body or increased level in the body are detected by the islets of Langerhans, right? So they act as receptors because they detect the change in stimuli or the change in the glucose level. Right, number two, in the pancreas, right? So the pancreas becomes now the control center. Okay, number three, the islets of Langerhans respond by secreting insulin into the blood. So they respond by secreting insulin into the blood. Number four, insulin is then transported to the liver. Remember, the liver now becomes the effector or the target organ. Okay, number five, the liver will convert excess glucose to glycogen, right? So it converts glucose to glycogen. Glycogen is a type of carbohydrate, right? So it's stored energy. So it's carbohydrate. Okay, then your glucose levels will decrease back to normal. So what happens when there are low levels in the blood? Okay, low glucose levels in the blood. So decreased levels of glucose in the blood will be detected by the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas. Then thereafter, the pancreas, right, will secrete glucagon into the bloodstream, and that glucagon will be transported to the liver, right? Then the liver will then convert glycogen to glucose. Then your glucose levels will increase back to normal. Remember, glycogen is just a stored form of energy. Okay. Now let's go to regulating thyroxine levels in the body. So remember, thyroxine in the last video, we said what's the function of thyroxine? Function of thyroxine is that it controls metabolism in the body and it's secreted by the thyroid gland. Okay. So what happens in the body? How does how do we how does our bodies maintain a constant level of thyroxine in the body, right? Okay, so let's look at the control center, right? So the control center for thyroxine level, right, is the pituitary gland, right? What is the message? What is the hormone that is sent to the target organ? The message is the thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH. Then the TSH will be transported to the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland becomes the target organ, right? The target organ. Then the thyroid gland will secrete thyroxine. I hope that makes a lot of sense, right? Okay, now let's look at how the thyroxine levels are maintained in the body, right? Okay, so let's check in a sense. So this is the sense whereby there are low thyroxine levels in the body, right? There are low thyroxine levels in the body. Let me just decrease this so that it can be clear, be visible. Okay. Okay. So what happens when thyroxine levels are too low, right, in the body? What happens when thyroxine levels are too low? The pituitary gland will do what? Will increase the secretion of thyroxine stimulating hormone. And the thyroxine stimulating hormone will go to the thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland will be stimulated to secrete more thyroxine, right? Then your thyroxine level will increase back to normal. So let's look at the case whereby the levels of thyroxine are too high in the body or in the blood, right? So when they are too high, the pituitary gland is stimulated. The pituitary gland is stimulated to secrete less TSH. And when it secretes less TSH, the less TSH will go to your thyroid gland. Then eventually your thyroid gland will secrete less thyroxine. Then your thyroxine levels, they decrease back to normal. Okay. Now let's go to the actual process, the actual feedback mechanism between TSH and thyroxine. Okay. So what happens when there are low thyroxine levels in the blood? So low thyroxine levels are detected by the pituitary gland, right? Pituitary gland. Then number two, the pituitary gland secretes more TSH. Then the more TSH or TSH will be transported through the blood to the thyroid gland, right? Then what will happen in the thyroid gland? The thyroid gland will then secrete more thyroxine. Then your thyroxine levels will increase back to normal. Let's look at the opposite then, when there are high levels of thyroxine in the blood. So what happens? So high levels of thyroxines are detected by the pituitary gland, then the pituitary gland will then secrete less TSH, right? Then the less TSH will cause the thyroid gland to secrete less thyroxine. Then your levels of thyroxine will decrease back to normal. Okay, so this is the thyroxine feedback mechanism, the feedback mechanism between thyroxine stimulating hormone or TSH and thyroxine is relatively easy when you compare it to other processes, right? Okay, I think this is the last process. Like this is the last process with regards to feedback mechanism. Then in the next video, we'll be focusing on disorders, and disorders related to hormones, and eventually thermoregulation, right? Okay, I hope this class was helpful, guys. And these are notes. I just tried to summarize these notes to the best of my ability. I hope it will assist you in trying to understand these processes, right? Okay.